I'm going to share 10 tactics to help you go viral and make better content, regardless of what niche, what business, what industry you're in. And the reason these 10 tactics work is because we're playing on human psychology, stuff that everybody finds fascinating and interesting. So I've got all 10 of them laid out right here. I'm going to remove these one at a time and talk you through them. So let's get started. Number one, mix compounding into your content. People love the idea of compounding. If you have read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, it talks a lot about this idea of compounding. Compounding is called the eighth wonder of the world, and it's this idea that you can. It's usually used in terms of money, where if you invest enough dollars, then your dollars start to make more dollars and eventually surpasses the amount that you might be making at your full-time job or business. And compounding can also be applied to relationships, to skill building, to improvement of any kind. This is the famous James Clear image where he says, if you get 1% better every day over the course of a year, that's 37.78 times better. Versus if you get 1% worse every day, this is the downside of compounding, then you're going to be, one or 3% of your former self. And so people love this idea. And the nice thing is regardless of your niche or industry or business, you can talk about compounding and how it applies. And so in my case, I talk about content all the time. And so I can say something like, I started posting on LinkedIn a year ago. I started doing daily posts on LinkedIn a year ago. Here's what's happened since. I've gone from 1,000 to 18,000 followers, 500 to 5,000 email subscribers, and most importantly, it's become my number one marketing channel for my business. Like that could be a post that I could talk about that incorporates the idea of compounding. I can have an image of my follower count, kind of like this one that we're seeing here. And so if you do like you can figure out how to apply this for your specific topic and category, but include this and these types of posts tend to do really well. All right, let's jump to number two. Get rid of this. All right, second, mix leverage into your content. So leverage is the idea of using media, using code, using people, or using capital to multiply your efforts. So this video that I'm making right now, I'm gonna spend whatever 30, 60 minutes making this video, and it's going to continue. It'll be a replica of myself that continues serving me, where people might find this 5 years from now and watch this, and it's educating them on the way that I think. And that is incredibly powerful. And so Naval Ravikant really made this idea famous, but basically you can use capital, so dollars, you can use labor, so people, you can use code, so apps, you can use media. And I think the actual pyramid of what's high leverage and low leverage is could be argued pretty strongly. For example, Warren Buffett used capital quite well and had a lot of it, and I would say it was very high leverage. And Peter Drucker has used labor very well, and Mark Zuckerberg has used code really well. And guess what? Netflix, currently like $400 billion market cap company, has used both code to kind of store the media, but they're primarily a media business, and they've used that exceptionally well. And so I think all of these can be high leverage, but basically, how can you show people what are the tools? How can you use capital? How can you use labor? How can you use tools, code, media to help your clients, to help your prospects, your target audience? And people love this idea as well. And so, highly recommend using it. All right, tactic number three, mix inversion into your content. So, if you know who Charlie Munger is, he's Warren Buffett's business partner, recently deceased. He would always use this phrase, invert, always invert. And he got this from a mathematician who realized that to solve a bunch of different math problems, if you just looked at them in reverse instead of front to back, you look at them back to front, then they're easier to solve a lot of times. And that's the same way with life and problems and any number of things. If you work backwards, instead of saying, how can I live a happy life? You say, how can I live a miserable life? You write those things down and then you avoid doing them. And that is a pretty sure way to succeed. And you can apply this to business, you can apply this in any way, but asking this question is always interesting. So instead of saying how to get rich, say how to stay poor. And I know for a fact Alex Hormozy wrote a Twitter thread that was how to stay poor, and he was just using this idea of inversion, and he wrote out a bunch of all of the stuff to do to stay poor, and then he inverted it and said, so if you actually want to not be poor, you don't want to stay poor, then do the opposite of this. And it went extremely viral. All right, number 4, mix opportunity costs into your content. So an example of how I did this was I said, I landed a 100K client. It was amazing. And it was also a huge mistake. And that was kind of my hook. And I went into how for this particular client, I didn't sell my regular service, the one that I built all of my efficiencies around, which is social content, particularly LinkedIn content. And so because I was doing something besides LinkedIn content, it was taking away from my business. And so in a lot of ways, I probably lost more money than I made, because if I would have just focused on the main thing and continued turning the dial on something that was already working, then good chance I would have made more money than I did. And so opportunity cost is this idea of what's your next best alternative. You have to weigh whatever you're deciding to do right now means that you're losing out on something else you could be doing. Now, you could let this drive you crazy, but what you want to do is use it to inform your decisions so that you can know when to say no and when to say yes. And incorporating that kind of this idea into what you're doing for your content, like, is very powerful. Okay, tactic number 5. Mixing first principles thinking into your content. So when you hear first principles thinking, I'm curious what you think of. For me, I know I think of Elon Musk. He's kind of famous for being a first principles physics-based thinker. And the really simple definition here is you just break things down to their most basic units, and then you rebuild it from scratch. And so just to share the Elon Musk example, NASA had built some rockets before, but they were incredibly expensive. And instead of just assuming that the cost that NASA had built the rockets for is the cost, Elon Musk said, okay, what materials do we need to make rockets out of? How much do each of those materials cost? Oh, those only cost 1/200th the price of what NASA did. Then I wonder if with labor, like if we're able to make rockets at a significant discount. And for whatever reason, NASA's labor costs just went like super high, or maybe they were buying materials at crazy prices. And the company SpaceX was born, and they were able to basically make these now reusable rockets at a fraction of the price of previous rockets, because they challenged that initial thinking of how much does this actually have to cost. And so you can see this is like just break things down to their basic units and question assumptions, like what actually matters here. And yeah, including first principles thinking into your content, tied to your industry, tied to your niche, tends to perform well, because this is another concept that people really resonate with. All right, number 6, skin in the game. Mix skin in the game into your content. So there's a book called Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb. But this idea isn't exclusive to his book. It's maybe you've heard those who pay attention. Like if you don't use your dollars to buy something, you're not going to care as much. There's a reason why if you want to be a U.S. president, that you need to be a U.S. citizen. It's like you have skin in the game. Those are the examples that come to mind off the top of my head. But if you don't care, like if you tell people to invest in something that you're not invested in, Like the incentives aren't really aligned there. But if this basically what having skin in the game does is it aligns incentives. And so if I tell you to do XYZ and I'm also doing XYZ and XYZ thing goes up or XY thing goes down, it's good or it's bad, then I'm going to be very careful about the advice that I give. Like I'm only going to win if you win. This is the idea of something like a revenue share in business where you could have basically if you win, then I get a piece of it, and if you lose, then I also get a piece of that. And that's the whole idea of equity. It's like if you want equity in a business. So people really like this concept and high level. I don't know why this image is so blurry, but this will improve your learning. It will encourage ethical behavior and it'll motivate you. All right, let's go to number 7. Mix power laws into your content. Another concept people love. You've probably heard of the 80-20 principle, where 20% of the effort delivers 80% of the results. So in school, in college, I had one specific class, it was my finance class, where the assignments accounted for 0% of your grade, and you're just graded on the test. And so basically, if you could just understand the concepts, then you could do exceptionally well on the test, and you didn't have to do all of the assignments. I mean, they could help you understand the concepts, so you could choose to do those. But basically, if you just figured out the stuff you actually needed to know, you could, get an A in the class with a very little effort. And so there's this rule like it just applies everywhere. And so with business, like for me, I've realized if I want to get leads, then what I should do is I should post content and specific types of content, and I should do outreach. And if I do those two things, like I will get leads, period. And so if I just do those consistently, and I'll get the result that I'm looking for versus all of the crazy stuff that people are trying and experimenting with. It's like just find what works and do more of it. And so this idea applied to any niche, any industry, any endeavor is a powerful one that people love, and this will help your content perform better if you use it. Number 8, let's get rid of this thing. All right, Lindy effects. Mix Lindy effects into your content. So a Lindy effect is basically saying that the longer something lasts, the longer it's likely to last. So the fact that books have been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years, means that they'll probably be around for hundreds or thousands of years longer. The fact that music's been around for that long is the same. Social media is a newer thing, and we don't know how long social media will be around. Like it's only been around for 15 years, maybe it's only around for another 15 years. At the same time, you could say that's just a form of content, and people, content's been around forever. One to many content. So like, someone telling a story around the campfire, that's the same kind of thing. It's a one to many engagement, a speaking engagement. And so you can say that's been around forever. So it'll continue to be around forever, just in different formats. So basically, just to show you an image, over here you got viral trends that, if you post a tweet, it's up for 24 hours and then the shelf life is over, it's gone. Versus you publish a book and, we've got the Bible from 2000 years ago and it continues to be read. Meditations, Marcus Aurelius. And this is a good way of thinking about creating something that lasts, is to create something that's been around for a long time already. All right, next. Number 9, mix status versus wealth games into your content. So this one is going to be slightly more industry specific. Like this works for businesses, particularly B2B businesses, but you can also mix this into B2C as well. So status versus wealth games is basically the idea of are you playing what game are you playing? Are you trying to what's the reward of winning the game that you're winning? Are you playing for freedom and independence, or are you playing for dollars? Like, are you playing so that people perceive you in a certain way? And so you can see here, this is something Naval's talked a lot about as well. He says ignore people playing status games. They gain status by attacking people playing wealth creation games. So, if you say you're chasing money, like, that's such a waste of life. You might be playing the status game that's saying that to the people who are chasing money. Anyway, this is just something to be aware of, and you can absolutely mix it into your content. A good example I can share is I have a friend named Kieran Drew who he's kind of playing that status game of like, who cares about like wealth creation? It's all about freedom, and like that is a status game in a way, and it differentiates him. And um, funny enough, like, it's helping him play his wealth game as well. This is just something worth thinking about, and if you can mix it into your content, because people do find it fascinating. All right, number 10, final one. Mix second order thinking into your content. So I saw a video of Sam Ovens, who went viral, really viral, talking about this concept. But it's actually a very simple concept. It's basically asking the question like, okay, something happens, and then you just ask, and then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And there's a powerful example that I read in Poor Charlie's Almanac from Charlie Munger, where he talked about estimated costs for implementing something. I can't remember the exact scenario, but the estimated costs were about 10% of what the total costs were. And it's because they didn't realize by changing certain laws, or by changing the laws or the rules of the game, you then change the incentives, which then changes how people act, which then changes everything about the entire system. And so, a very simple example I could share is, if you decide to buy a TV, it's like you don't just get a TV, you're also making future decisions for yourself, because if you you know you probably want to justify that expense. If you spend $3,000 and say, okay, well, I'm going to get use out of this, and so you get use out of it, and you start spending time watching the television, and then going back to opportunity cost, you're missing out on what you could be doing if you were, and like, watching television probably isn't the best use of your time, and so there is an opportunity cost. And by not building your business, by watching TV instead of building your business, there's going to be a third order effect from that, and so on and so forth. And so every decision you make has these second and third and fourth and fifth order effects. And so you want to at least do a little bit of thinking as you're making particularly big decisions. How is this going to affect you down the line? What consequences will this have, and how will those affect you? And so tying this into your content is another very powerful frame. Here's a visual where you could see if you make decision A, and how it affects it versus decision B and how it'll affect you. And those are 10 ways that you can go viral with your content, because these are powerful mental models that people find fascinating, regardless of where they live, what industry they're in. They want to know about these ideas. And so incorporating them into your content will make your content better and will help you go viral.